There's an older contemporary of Paul living in Egypt, a very rich Jewish family, the richest in Egypt, called Philo of Alexandria. Now, we mentioned him already, but his main approach that it pays to Scripture, and almost all his work is called the allegorical approach. The allegorical approach, he didn't have a New Testament at that time. And he's just using the stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and so on. And he's taking them as allegory because he considers himself a sophisticated person. So he considers himself a sophisticated person, and those stories are a little bit too primitive for his taste as a cosmopolitan. His family controls the Red Sea trade to India. In other words, it controls the spice and silk trade down the Red Sea all the way over to places like, the Malabar coast in India. On the Malabar coast, you know what you get on the Malabar coast, don't you? What do you eat with Japanese food always? What's it called, that particular?
Wasabi.
Yeah, but what's it we call in English? What is it? What is it? Not horseradish. No. Wasabi is a specific spice. What is it? I can't remember the name now.
I think it's ginger.
Ginger. It's ginger. So, huh? Okay, pardon me. You're right. You're right. I'm talking about the yellow stuff, not the green stuff. Yeah, the wasabi is what you're saying. Some other sort of hotish stuff. But the yellow is ginger, right? And it's little twigs. I mean, I've been in those places in India, and I've seen these stalls where they sell all of that. So Philo's family controlled that whole commerce. And we'll see that the Herodians are going to be mixed up with Philo's family. And Philo's family, Philo's nephew is mentioned in the book of Acts. Do any of you know, remember from my class or otherwise, what that fellow's name is? I think it's Acts 3 or 4. He's governor in Palestine in the 40s. He's supposed to be persecuting Peter and early Christians. Acts calls him Alexander. Acts calls him Alexander. He's Tiberius Alexander. He's Philo's nephew. Now, Josephus mentioned, that's why all this is really important for us. Josephus mentions Tiberius Alexander in his works, particularly the Antiquities, but also the Jewish War. He tells you who he is. And he says he was a backslider from Judaism who went over to the Romans. So he also became one of the ideal Roman. Josephus is a backslider too, but he doesn't feel like he's left Judaism. Tiberius Alexander has. So he becomes a Roman civil servant, the epitome of a Roman civil servant. So Acts portrays him in the 40s as persecuting early Christians, like Peter, after the ascension of Jesus and so on. I think it's in Acts 3. But later, Josephus has him where? What's he doing later in Josephus? So he was governor in Palestine in the 40s sometime. What's he doing later? He is Titus's aide-de-camp at the siege of Jerusalem. And when Vespasian, we've talked about Vespasian and Titus enough, now I don't have to keep repeating who they are. The year is what? 66 AD CE. When Vespasian is brought to 68 is when Vespasian actually comes. But when Vespasian and Titus, his son, come and start to put down the revolt after it's initially successful in 66 and 67 and 68, the siege of Jerusalem begins. When he goes to Rome to become emperor, who goes to Rome to become emperor? Vespasian. You say, well, I don't remember that. Yeah, I talked about it several times. But anyway, what's the new family line when I was telling you about the Flavians? I was telling you about Josephus being called Flavius Josephus. He's adopted into the new imperial line for services rendered. I'm trying to make up some sketchy areas here. Okay? So when Vespasian goes to Rome, he leaves his son Titus in control of the war in Palestine. and the siege of Jerusalem, which is starting to, take hold. But the man that he leaves with him to make sure he doesn't make any mistakes, and who's now considered a general in his army, is Tiberius Alexander, Philo's nephew. So there's a little incestuous group here, all knowing each other, all involved with each other. And I think Paul is among them, frankly. And Paul, I'm sure, knows Philo in terms of his work anyway. He's intellectually highly thought of enough that he would know him. And there may be more connections than that. I'm not going to go any further than that. But so when we get Paul talking here, and as he does all the time, you see, you read this for uplift. I read this for clues. I'm not in church or synagogue or mosque. I'm in university looking for answers, not spiritual answers, but historical answers. What the scrolls are, what Paul's relationship to the scrolls are, who Jesus was, if we can even get a hold on that, and so on and so forth. What the Maccabees were doing, and what Daniel has a relation to. So, to my mind, we're looking for clues here. So, look. First of all, I mean, everything in Galatians is totally interesting. I think I told you about chapters 1 and 2 last time. But here we are in chapter 3, and it's just like one thing after another. I wouldn't even know where he's talking about being justified by the law, and the righteous shall live by faith. Look at that, 3:11. The righteous shall live by faith is interpreted in the letter to James differently than Paul interprets it here. It's from Habakkuk 2:4. Habakkuk 2:4 will be interpreted in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It'll be one of the most important documents in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So you see, everything forms a complex of materials here. And look at this. But the law is not of faith, but the man who has done these things shall live by them. There he's quoting another passage in Deuteronomy or someplace. But Christ redeemed us from the law's curse, being made a curse for us. And he then picks up this thing, cursed be anyone hung upon a tree. So through some fancy rhetorical gymnastics, he's got it that the law is a curse. What he means by that is the law in Deuteronomy hands out blessings and cursings. And some people are cursed and some people are blessed depending if they obey the law. So he automatically realized that he's not obeying the law, and the people he's involved with aren't obeying the law.